Good morning and welcome to Travels with Monkey Boy. Again, I take you back to 1997, I think it is, April. Um, and we are on day 5 of our trip to Nepal. Last we left you, it was day 2 of our hike in the Annapurna foothills. Just half an hour more. While your body kind of gets used to hiking, from my experience, it takes about a week for it to get there. Until that week goes by, each day gets progressively harder. The second night sleeping in the ground leaves you a little stiff. When you go to stand, your body muscles remember the hell you've put them through. Your feet still throbbing. Again, almost the minute you put your shoes on. But at least today we were mentally ready because it was the last day. Not only the last day, but supposedly the shortest. We left again early, around 8 a.m. It was still drizzling a little from the night before, and some of us started with raincoats on. It was an interesting start. It was less than a 3-minute walk back into the village, and then we began descending to the lake. At some time in Nepalese history, someone had built steps leading from the village down to the lake. The incredible thing, though, was that there were 1,000 steps. Well, maybe it was 2,000 steps down to the lake. Down and down we went, walking down these ancient and worn stones with the old leaves on them because a new and treacherous became a new and treacherous challenge. Alex fell almost immediately and fairly badly. He was hurt and sniffled back tears, but he wouldn't be carried. He walked every step of the way so far, and he could taste those 2,000 Saudi riyals. Still, his pain was apparent early, and he destroyed any chance he had at the no fussing bonus. I fell too, twice. My problem was that I had the camera around my neck and my raincoat. By 8:30, it was too hot to wear. The raincoat was wrapped around my camera bag. This, in conjunction with the bulbous stomach, made it impossible to see my feet. So I'm walking down these ancient slippery steps, holding Alex's hand when there was room for us to walk side by side, and praying there wasn't a loose rock, stick, or root in the path to trip me up. While I normally would have complained, two events struck me as amazing. One was the Sherpas. I haven't mentioned much about these guys, but these guys are maybe 5 foot 6 inches tall. They weigh maybe 120 pounds, and each one carried these massive loads on their back. And I mean massive. I think one carried 3 suitcases on his back. Another had all the tents. But what was even more interesting was that they would tie their shoes to the packs and walk in flip-flops. These mountain supermen are walking down these 2,000 slippery steps with a weight equal to their body weight on their backs and doing it all in plastic sandals. Who was I to complain? Then, about 3/4 of the way down these steps, we met a young girl with a big metal water container, like the old milk pails, on her back, and she was going up the stairs. If I were to try to lift that damn pail, I'd be in traction for a week. And here this little waif was carrying this pail up the equivalent of both towers of the World Trade Center. Incredible. Note the World Trade Center existed at this time. The hike down took us a couple of hours. From there, we hiked another hour or so across a kind of flat plain, as you can see in the background. That the interesting thing here was the grass leeches, just like tiny worms, really, but leeches nonetheless. Even more interesting was how the Sherpas seemed to be afraid of them. It didn't give me a very good feeling when I see these rock men panic because one of these tiny little worms had gotten past the defense of their plastic slippers and started sucking the blood of their ankles. I reasoned we didn't have a lot to fear since we all had boots and mid-calf socks on, but that darn knucklehead Matthew was picking the leeches up with sticks and trying to get them to be interested in him. It was interesting to see how they were drawn to skin like metal to a magnet. And of course, one of the leeches from the stick managed to suck onto Matthew's thumb, after which he began the kind of screaming and crying that is reserved for the really stupid. By now it was nearly noon. It was hot, and Alex was fading fast. I asked the guide how much further, and he said that it was only another half hour to lunch. Of course, that half hour involved an hour and a half climb up this mountain. Survival now was the only concern. My feet pounded, my muscles ached, and my heart and lungs were gasping as we went up and up and up. When we finally made it to the top, the guide assured us it was only another half hour to our lunch spot. It now began to drizzle on us a little harder. Poor Alex at this point was beside himself. We walked down the hill now, which was easy, but the soil was a red clay, and with the rain, it made it slippery and gooey. The guide pointed out to us the lake, which still seemed to be some distance off, and he said that if we wanted to, instead of walking the half hour after lunch, we could walk down to the lake and take the boat across. As I could see that the walk down to the lake was going to be at least half an hour, I knew that we would have made much more than half an hour to go, that we must have had much more than half an hour to go. The half an hour downhill was now 45 minutes long, and Alex was on empty, empty, empty. I tried to preoccupy him with talk about computer games and his favorite shows and what he would do with his 200 reals. But at this point, he began to cry. I knew what he felt. I felt it too. My feet were aching and my spirit was almost broken. The guide came back and said it was just a few minutes ahead, which kept us going for another 10 minutes. But then we came to a fork in the road, and the guide said it was just up this hill a little way, and we could stop for lunch. At these words, Alex began spinning around, honest to God, spinning around and flailing his arms and crying and shouting, "No, no, no." At which point he flopped down under the mud in great sobs of anger and pain. I took off his shoes and rubbed some lotion on his feet, while Jareen took one of the most interesting pictures we have. Alex with his eyes rolled back into his head and his whole face racked in pain. I'm not sure I've ever been so proud of him. It's this sort of greed, the willingness to sacrifice all for a few bucks, that lets me know he is my son. After about 5 minutes foot massage, he said he was ready to go on, and indeed, our lunch spot was 50 steps away. We rested for a good hour as the rain got heavier on us. At this point, the rain was hard enough that our guide said that the boats wouldn't be working and that we would have to walk the rest of the way in. Alex spent most of the lunch break laying motionless on our mat. Fortunately, a Tibetan traveling saleswoman came up to us with her collection of knickknacks, and the lure of shopping perked up the boy. He haggled a little over an ornate gold egg-shaped thing. Turns out it was a salt shaker, but it's still a young boy's treasure. After the shopping, we put on our shoes, and as the rain became a driving rain, we began the walk up our last hill, along the ridge, and then down into the village where our buses awaited us. It was probably a further hour and a half after lunch, but my God, was it a good feeling. We ached, we all ached, but we could see our destination and see it getting closer with each step. I also felt like it was a special family moment. Frankie had been carried a fair bit that day, but she easily had walked half the way, having walked 100% of the long second day. Now, in the last stretch, she was walking along in the rain with her mother, singing like a bird. Alex now knew he was going to make it. The food, the rest, and the golden egg gave him enough energy to overcome the pain and finish up. The rain started letting up as we entered the sizable village. We stopped at a little restaurant and had cokes all around. Soon after, we boarded a bus for the hour-long ride back to Pecora. There's something very special about a hike like this. Okay, it's not climbing Everest or anything, but for a little family, it was. When you go to Disney or Hawaii or someplace, you're overwhelmed with sensory stimulation. Everything is fun and exciting. Doing a hike is dull and physically demanding. But at the end, you sure feel like you accomplished something. The thrill of Disney fades quickly in the mind, but the sense of accomplishment doing something like trekking sticks in your mind forever. We stayed at the Hotel Pokora and we arrived late in the afternoon, maybe around 3:30. The plan was for us to get up early the next morning and go on a 2-day rafting trip. One of the pressing needs was laundry, and though it was late in the day, I went to ask the hotel manager if there was any way, even paying extra money, that we could get some laundry done. He looked at his watch, then he looked out the window and said it wasn't possible. It then occurred to me that he was looking out the window because they had a washing machine, but they didn't have a dryer. So it was cloudy and late in the day, the clothes wouldn't dry in time. Boy, did we get spoiled with modern conveniences. We went about 4:30 for lunch in town. Pokhara is really as beautiful a place as you can imagine. We ate at an outdoor restaurant overlooking the lake with big snow-covered peaks in the background. The lake was dotted with sailboats and canoes. As the sun began setting behind the mountains and casting us into shadow, a flock of large white stork-like birds flapped into a nearby tree. We ordered a couple of drinks and sent the kids down to the beach area to play. If this wasn't the nicest hour of our vacation, then I'm not sure what was. The waiters now were coming around to light the torches that served as dinner lights, and soon after brought us our menus. It was a broad menu to order from, and the chef proved that he could cook Mexican, Indian, Italian, and American cuisines equally badly. It is a rare chef that can ruin pizza and French fries, but this man was the Caligula of cuisine. Oh well, I guess asking for good food would have been greedy. After dinner, we walked into Pecora, and of course, Joanne wanted to go shopping. This woman was an unbelievable shopper. Everywhere we went, every place that might have sold something, she bought. After Tanzania and Nepal, I swear they must have a separate room just for the crap they bought. I may be twisted a bit in the other direction, but I also like to have some kind of memento from the country we visit. Joanne always wanted some kind of memento from the gas station we visited. There was a huge article in the local Kathmandu newspaper talking about the Ministry of Tourism had forecast that the average visitor would spend $100 a day, but the country was greatly disappointed because the truth was more like $9 a day. A lot of college kids, hippies, and Indians. Well, Joanne spent $100 in knickknacks. I walked in a couple of shops and saw the same local art stuff that we've seen for days now, and I concluded it was time to go back to the hotel. We took a cab and left the Clinks to shop to their fill, and we went back to the hotel to prepare for tomorrow, our big day. Okay, that's the end of the story for now. Let's take a quick look at the map to remind you where we were at. Coming from Jeddah, we flew into Kathmandu. You look at the map, these are the great Himalayan mountains. We had flown to Pokhara, and we took a 3-day hike into these foothills of the Annapurna Mountains. Came back to Pokhara, and the next day we are going to go on a rafting trip. Okay, and let me share with you some pictures, just a couple now. There's Frankie with her walking stick, quite valuable thing. Look at the water buffaloes just walking around the village. There's the little boy, Frankie's age. The terraced rice paddies that we walk by almost constantly. Here was one of the steps that we had to walk up. And there's the famous picture with Alex's eyes rolled back into his head. And there's the foot lotion that I had brought along. It's a special cream to dull the senses. It was a hard trip. Okay, and that's all I got for today. Thanks for coming along. Rafting trip starting tomorrow.